You're here with Manis Friedman, Rabbi Friedman. I remember a story back in the 70s, the late 70s. He came to LA, and I was there, and we heard him speak. And I asked him, why is it when you speak, everyone pays attention to you? You could even read the label on a bottle, and everybody goes, wow, listen to this. And you told me, I remember you saying, maybe it's because I'm doing what I was created to do. And when you do what you're created to do, you do it well. Keep on going.
Oh, you can wish him happy birthday. He just turned 70.
He turned 70? Mazel tov.
רבות העם הזה בדרך, ואני הולך עם ראש למעלה, כל אחד הוא בן או בת של מלך. ככה היה וככה זה גם עלה, יהודי עם נשמה בוערת. בכל מקום ובכל ארץ לא רוצה שיהיה אחרת. יהודי אני זה משהו נצחי. בני אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, בני שרה רבקה רחל ולאה. בני אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, בני שרה רבקה רחל ולאה.
I'd say one of you asked me, but the truth is I think almost everybody in the room asked me, what's up with this afternoon? What are we doing? We're not a Hasidic yeshiva. And the answer is we're not a Hasidic yeshiva, but we are a yeshiva that in Rav Amital's words looks for authentic ways of Avodas Hashem and understands that there's more than one way to be Oved Hashem and more than one path. And today is an amazing opportunity for us to hear from not just a speaker, but perhaps the speaker, who, if I try to describe or list all the places he's spoken in, did a little research on the internet, it would take all afternoon. Well, I'll say as follows. Of Rav Manis Friedman is, the word spokesman, I think is not the right word. Maybe author, lecturer, philosopher, certainly world-renowned in being able to express ideas of Chabad and ideas of Hasidus and complicated ideas in Avodas Hashem with simple truths. I watched and listened to some of the YouTube clips. I don't have to tell you, you'll see in a second what an amazing speaker he is. He's been quoted, he's appeared on CNN, PBS, BBC, and other anti-Semitic news outlets. Quoted in the Times often. If you don't know the Times, perhaps you heard of Rolling Stone. Quoted there. Quoted by a range of authors and in a range of areas. He's just respected for his ability to articulate truths. And it's our zchus, a real zchus to have him here today, and I don't want to take up any more time, so I would say b'chavod gadol, Rabbi Manis Friedman.
Well, after that introduction, I don't even want to speak. I ruin it. How are you? So, what do you want to talk about? Nothing? Any suggestions? Hanukkah. Yud-Tes Kislev.
See any Chabad?
No. Let's stick to interesting subjects. I mean, it's very, very fundamental questions. And if I could suggest a very effective and useful way of thinking and learning. You know the four sons of the Haggadah: the Chacham, the Rasha, the Tam, and the She'ein Yodea Lishon. We generally assume that the Chacham is the best. That's why he comes first. He gets a nice answer. The Rasha, of course, is not so good. The Tam we treat like a Nebuch. Unfortunately, not very bright. His question is not very sophisticated. And then there's the one who doesn't know how to ask at all. So we're going down from the best to the worst. But there's another way of looking at it which is really, really important for you to consider. The Chacham is a Chacham, and that's not always good. So he is smart, but he is not wise. The Rasha is also smart and not wise. So you see that being smart can lead to one of two ways, either to the path of the Chacham or the path of the Rasha. But the Tam is not a simpleton. The Tam means, from the word Tamimim or Tamim, he is mature, he is wise. And his question can be understood as an answer to the other two sons. For example, what does the Chacham ask? I know this is the wrong season for this, right? But you remember from last Pesach. What does the Chacham ask? Right. The Chacham is asking, why are there three different kinds of mitzvahs? Some that make a lot of sense, some that make a little sense, and some that we can't figure out at all. To this, his brother, the Tam, says, what's the question of the Tam? Mazot. The Tam says to his brother, you want to know why there are three kinds of mitzvahs, but do you know what a mitzvah is? Mazos. Give me a definition of what you're talking about, and your question will go away. So before you ask a sophisticated question, why are there three kinds of mitzvahs? Do you know what a mitzvah is? First figure out what a mitzvah is. And if you do that, your question will answer itself. And then the Rasha says, Mo ha'avodah hazeis lochem. What's with all this avodah? Why do you need it for? To him, the Tam says, Mazes. What's avodah? If you would bother to define it clearly, your questions would go away. So I'll give you an example. I'm talking to this college student who's a big skeptic, and he says, we're talking about the tradition of who taught whom, how the Torah came down. So after talking about it for a while, he said, oh, by the way, I don't want to give you the wrong impression. I don't believe in God at all. I said, what? He said, I don't believe in God. I said, I don't understand what you're saying. He says, not everybody believes in God. I don't believe in God. I said, I hear what you're saying. I don't understand what you're saying. He says, what don't you understand? I said, I don't know what God means. What do you mean by God? What's God? He says, I don't know. So I said, so what don't you believe in? If he were talking to the Tam, that's exactly what the Tam would say to him. You do believe in God, you don't believe in God, excuse me, but what are you talking about? What does God mean? He says, I don't know. Oh, so it's not that you don't believe in God. You have no idea what we're talking about. So how can you decide whether you believe or don't believe? You don't even know what the word means. Yes? So he says, okay, tell me, what's God? If you had to answer that question, what would you say? Sitting in yeshiva, you're davening 3 times a day, you're serving God. What's God? Are we allowed to ask this question? Yeah.
A supreme being, all-knowing and all-powerful?
Yes. What else? This supreme being, all-knowing and all-powerful. What about him? Yeah?
Creator of the universe?
Yes. What about him? Okay, so you're absolutely right. What do we know? The Rambam tells us right at the beginning that the foundation of all foundations and the pillar of all wisdom is to know, not to believe, but to know that there is an original being whose existence is absolute. In other words, he wasn't created. And from him, all other existence derives. Can anybody disagree with this? Can anybody say the world didn't begin at the beginning? So do you have to believe in God? No, you don't. There was a beginning. Whatever that was, that's God. And from that beginning, everything comes. But what do you mean when you say Hashem or HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What do you mean? So here's a problem. It's a correct definition or description of God to say He is all-powerful, all-knowing, He is eternal, He has everything, He is perfect. And yeah?
God loves us.
So this infinite, eternal, all-perfect, all-knowing God loves you. Is that a little hard to believe? He's so great, He's so big, He's so infinite, He's so unknowable, but He loves you? How did that happen? First of all, when did you meet? Yeah.
I mean, that's what he tells us, you know. Regarding his revelation, he says, you know, he loves us and cares about, and describes himself as with multi states, you know. At one point can be Al-Kana with different capacities and concerns at different points in different states to show himself at different points. So he's not, I wouldn't say he's always completely loving, but has different perspectives and different sides, and gives Judaism a different, a wide array of.
So there are these two sides. On the one hand, God is infinite, unknowable, mysterious, invisible. And on the other hand, He's very involved, He feels and He cares and He notices. Yes? They go together? When it says in the Torah, God's arm, God's eye, God's word, are we supposed to take that literally? No. It's a metaphor. Right? Because God doesn't have an arm, He doesn't have an eye, He doesn't really speak. So what description of Him do we take literally? If he doesn't really speak, and he doesn't really have an eye, and he doesn't really have an arm, does he really get angry? Is his anger real? Huh?
Say yes.
You could say yes? Yeah?
No, God by definition is a perfect being, and having different emotions or having different physical traits would by definition make him imperfect.
Why is having emotions make you imperfect?
Because
Being
then,
controlled by them makes you imperfect. Having them doesn't make you imperfect.
but then there are other factors that can.
Okay, but we already accepted that in the way that he's not the other.
So let me try to resolve this exact conflict here. When we say don't take it literally, we're a little mistaken, and it's not exactly correct. Every word in Torah is literal. Torah doesn't play games. So what does it mean that we should see it as a metaphor? So I'll use a quick example. My granddaughter's doll broke. Her arm, the doll's arm came off, and my granddaughter was crying. So to try to cheer her up, I sat down next to her and I said, "The arm came off? Oy, that must have hurt really badly." So she starts to laugh. She says, "It didn't hurt." I said, "How could it not hurt? The arm came off." She says, "It's not a real arm." I said, "How do you know?" She said, "It's plastic." I said, "You're right. What was I thinking? A real arm can't be made out of plastic. What is a real arm made out of? A bone with some flesh on it. That's a real arm? No, it's not. You know who has a real arm? God has a real arm. Literally, real arm. You mean like mine? No, real. Did you miss that word? We are the metaphor. The question is, the Torah uses the same word to describe my arm as it describes his arm. Now that can't be. Something's wrong with that. So the answer is, it's just a metaphor. Your arm is the metaphor. So why does the Torah even use a metaphor? To help you get a little bit of an impression, a little bit of an understanding of what his arm is like. But if he doesn't have an arm, and you tell me he has an arm, that helps me understand what? You just confused me and lied to me. So, Torah medaberes b'lashon b'nei Adam, when it's referring to your arm. Torah calls your arm, your speech, your eye, your ear, with the same word that it describes his. Don't take that seriously, because your arm is not a real one. So let's try it again. Does God really speak, or is that a human quality? God really speaks. Human beings usually just babble. And the proof is, Vayemer Elikim Yehi Eir, Vayehi Eir. You try it. See what your speech accomplishes. I tell my kids to be quiet, and it has no effect at all. So who really speaks? Hu Omar Vayehi. Hu Tziva Vayamed. He speaks. Our speech? We're mimicking him, that's all. We are the metaphor. Does God really have an arm? He really has an arm. And you know what an arm does? It splits a sea. What does your arm do? Doesn't that change everything? So now when somebody says, does God really get angry? I mean, come on, does he really get angry? I mean, like me? No. He really gets angry. You just lose your cool. So what does it mean, don't take it literally? That's wrong. Don't take it physically. When we read about God's arm, don't think of his arm as being physical, because that's like being plastic. That's not a real arm. So his arm is real. It's the real thing. And we are created in his image, so we have something like an arm. So then the question is, why does Torah use the same word? And the answer is to give you a little bit of some kind of impression of what his arm might be like. What are the similarities between our arms and his? Well, we have a right arm and a left arm. He has a right arm and a left arm. An arm is an extension. When God reaches out to his creation, that's the arm. But that's a real arm. So now, God is perfect, God is infinite, God is eternal, God is almighty. And yet he cares about you. And he cares about the sandwich you eat or don't eat. He cares about the nickel that you take legally or illegally. How does that make sense? How does an infinite, eternal being get concerned about things so petty? I think it was a backlash to Christianity that we bend over backwards to avoid making Hashem sound human. Because we're not Christians, right? But we've gone so far that we've made him sound less than human. And that's not kosher. So of course he's more than human, but he's not less than human. When we say God is infinite, Ein Sof, it doesn't mean he's very, very big. Ein Sof doesn't mean big. Ein Sof means beyond size. So a human being is finite, which means some things are too big for me. Too far away, I can't see them. Some things are too tiny, can't see them. On the sound scale, some sounds are too high, I don't hear it. And some sounds are too low, can't hear it. I'm stuck in the middle. I'm someplace between the biggest and the smallest. When we say God is infinite, it means nothing is too big, nothing is too small. But to say that some things are too small for God to bother, then that's a finite God. So the result is this. If he does care about you, then he cares infinitely. Not he can't care. Of course he can care. How can an infinite being care? Infinitely. So when he gives us his mitzvahs, how are we supposed to understand it? Most people assume that he's giving us the mitzvahs for our benefit. True? Mitzvahs are good for us. Keeps us out of trouble. Or gets us to Gan Eden. Or makes a mensch out of you. So why did God give us mitzvahs? For our benefit. Why did he create us in the first place? So that he can do something for our benefit? That's a bit of a stretch. And why are these mitzvahs so beneficial? What is it about the mitzvah that is so beneficial? If you don't mix meat and milk, what does that do for you? So again, a good mashal. A mother asks her son to make her tea 3 times a day, every day. Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv. For 50 years, this kid makes his mother tea. At the end of 50 years, he discovers that his mother never drinks tea. She doesn't like it, she doesn't need it, she never drank any of the tea. So he comes to his mother and he says, "What was that all about?" And the mother says, "I don't need tea. I asked you to make me tea to give you an opportunity to get closer to me. So by making the tea 3 times a day, every day for 50 years, he is growing closer to his mother." The problem with this little analogy is that it's simply not true. He is not getting closer to his mother. In fact, that's a very bad mother. This boy would get an A+ for obedience, but not for closeness. Because if he is busy doing something his mother does not like, does not need, and does not use, he's not getting any closer to her. He has been kept out of her life. She kept him busy with something that is not part of her life. So how will that get him closer to her? To make the point stronger, he then finds out that his mother loves coffee. She loves coffee. She lives for coffee. And she asked his brother to bring her the coffee. Now look at the difference. What are mitzvahs? Like tea or like coffee? If the mitzvah is tea, then we would get a very high grade for obedience, but we would not be getting closer to him. On the contrary, when you have some guy who's a nudnik, who won't go away, and you want to get him out of your life, what do? You send him on a mission that you don't care about and that you don't need. That way you keep him out of your life. So if God is keeping us busy doing something he doesn't need, what kind of relationship is this? You can say it's a test, it's an Etzion, you get a reward for being obedient, okay, but don't call it closeness. So the word mitzvah also has the meaning of tzafsa v'chibur, of closeness and connection. There's no connection if I'm doing what you don't need. So mitzvahs are not like tea, mitzvahs are like the coffee. Why does the mitzvah make us better? Why does it change the world? Because it's his most precious pleasure. Every mitzvah gives God infinite pleasure. When we do a mitzvah for him, it changes the world. Of course, it changes us also. So no mitzvah, even a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, even a custom, no mitzvah is like tea. It's all coffee. Every mitzvah is precious to him. In fact, every mitzvah really is him. You been to the army? Is this an air raid? So now look at what the Torah says. Im b'chukoisai teilechu, my chukim. Es shapsei sai tishmeiru. Keep my Shabbos. You see that? So we have to get a very different impression of what God and Torah really are. It's not a shopping list. It's not a set of suggestions that might make your life better. This is Him. You want to know something more about God besides that He's infinite and all-knowing? He is Shabbosdik. He is kosher. He is holy. This is Him. When you do those mitzvahs, you're becoming like Him. That means you're getting closer to Him, and that is an improvement, a vast improvement. So now the words Ivdu es Hashem take on a whole new meaning. How do you serve Him if He's already perfect and needs nothing? Do you ever wonder about that? So Ivdu es Hashem is literal? Or does Ivdu es Hashem mean obey Him? Not serve Him. If He's giving you the mitzvahs because it's good for you and you do the mitzvah, who are you serving? You're obeying Him, but who are you serving? So would it be correct to say that He needs the mitzvah far more than you do? It's His mitzvah. And the fact that we can do His mitzvah, this is an amazing privilege, it's an amazing compliment, and it does get us closer to Him. That's the real meaning of Ivdu es Hashem, and if you do, that is a simcha. So Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha, the b'simcha is not another requirement. It's like serve God and you better do it with simcha. It's more of a promise. Ivdu es Hashem and you will be b'simcha. Because what's a greater privilege than doing something that He really needs? How can God need? Isn't that human? We have needs. Yes, but our needs are not the real thing. His need is real. It's true. It was always. It will always be. Our needs, what you needed 2 years ago, you don't need anymore. What you need now, 5 years from now, you're not going to need it anymore. 120 years from now, you're not going to need anything. So our needs are not real. His need is real. So I was saying to this kid, I said, you're eating without a bracha? God needs you to make a bracha. He says, and if I don't, is He going to die? Well, no, he's not going to die. So the kid says, oh, so he doesn't really need it. Where's the flaw in this logic? If it won't kill him, then he doesn't really need it. Where's the flaw in that? Why is that not logical?
He's assuming God's needs are the same as ours, and if we don't get it, we die, so if He doesn't get it, He must die.
No, but his argument is if he doesn't die, then he doesn't really need.
Right, he's equating God's limitations with ours.
And what's wrong with that? Yeah, all the way in the back.
Compared to our needs, everything we need is for our continued existence, and God will continue anyway.
Okay. Follow the logic here. If you need something because without it you'll die, then you really need it. But if you need something and you won't die without it, then you don't really need it. Correct or wrong, or not? Here's the flaw in the logic. I need to breathe. Because if I don't, I won't live. So I very much need to breathe. My life depends on it. That's one way of putting it. But it is also true that I don't really need to breathe, I just need to live. Breathing is just a condition for life. If I could live without breathing, I would be much healthier. I need to eat? Well, yeah, if I don't eat, I'm going to die. So I don't really need to eat. I need to live. If I could live without eating, I would live forever. So whenever you say, you need this, because if not, that's going to happen, then it's the that you really need, not this. In other words, eating is only necessary as a means to an end, to keep me alive. So the fact that I need to eat because if I don't, I'll die, proves that I don't really need to eat. That's why eating, sleeping, drinking, breathing, they're not real needs. They're handicaps. You got a doctor who's in the middle of performing a very delicate brain operation. He's been at it for 4 hours. He needs to finish the operation, but he can't. He got to go eat. He needs to sleep. Really? He's a surgeon. He needs to finish the surgery, but he can't, because he's got this handicap. He can't go X number of hours without sleeping. So the need to sleep is a real need? No, it's a weakness. The real need is to be a surgeon, to finish the operation. A guy is doing research, important research out in the desert, but he can't finish it because he got thirsty. So now he needs to drink. He needs to finish the research, but he can't. Got to take a break and go eat something, drink something. So a real need is not a handicap. So when you say, how can God need? That's human. Of course, if you're defining need as a handicap, he has no handicaps. On the contrary, if God needs you to do a mitzvah, and he will not die if you don't do it, then he really needs you to do the mitzvah. Make sense? You following this logic? If there is no condition to it, then it is the real thing. So imagine God says, don't work on Shabbos. And people say, that's a great idea. I mean, if you work all week, when do you have time to spend with your family? So yeah, Shabbos is a great idea. It's family time. And imagine God saying, don't work on Shabbos. And we say, right, family time. And God says, no, don't add commentary. Just listen to what I'm telling you. No work on Shabbos. So that we can have time for the family? No. Because you're not supposed to work on Shabbos. Oh, because we need some time off? No. It's because you're not supposed to work on Shabbos. Like, read my lips. God says, don't eat certain animals. And we say, pig has trichinosis. It's very dangerous. And God says, will you stop this? I don't want you to eat chazer. Why? So that we can discipline ourselves? Don't make commentary. I don't want you to eat chazer. For what? For not eating chazer. Yeah, so what's going to happen? You won't eat chazer. So will that get me to Gan Eden? Will you cut it out already? It is the mitzvah. It's not for some purpose. I mean, imagine if you're sitting next in classroom and you scratch the blackboard. You know that? And somebody says, "Oh, don't do that." And you say, "Why? You're going to die?" "No, I'm not going to die. I hate when you do that." "Why? What happens?" "Nothing happens. I hate it." "Well, if not going to die, I'm going to continue doing it." So, if God says, "I need you to make a bracha," and He's not going to die if you don't, then He really needs you to make a bracha. It's not a mitzvah is not a tool, and it's not a means to an end. It's not to get you someplace better than the mitzvah. There is nothing better than the mitzvah. So if a person says, "I'll keep all the mitzvahs if that'll get me into Gan Eden," then you don't understand mitzvahs. They're not a ladder. They're not a tool. They're not a means to an end. They are forever His need, His way, His reality. So now, if you're a scholar, you're going to be asking, but after Mashiach comes, mitzvahs betelos la'asid lavi. Yes? No? Are we going to be doing mitzvahs after Mashiach comes? So you're told mitzvahs will be canceled in the future, in the world to come. Mitzvah will be canceled. You will no longer need to be told to do it. The tzivui will no longer be necessary. Why? Because the truth will be so obvious that we will do it naturally without having to be told. But we're not going to stop putting on tefillin. Ever. Because this is Him. This is Him. So let me conclude with this. Chassidut is defined as going beyond the letter of the law. Lifnim mishurat hadin. What exactly does this mean? If you sit down to a piece of chicken and you're not absolutely sure that it's kosher, so you don't eat it, is that beyond the letter of the law? Of course not. You're just trying to keep kosher. That's the letter of the law. If you're particular about a certain shchita, is that beyond the letter of the law? No. You're confident in this shchita, so you know you're keeping kosher. That's the law. If you eat only glatt kosher, beyond the letter of the law? No. You're just trying to make sure it's kosher. If you buy an esrog for $200 when you could buy one for $12, is that beyond the letter of the law? No. Hidur mitzvah is part of the law. You have to do mitzvahs beautifully. So what exactly is beyond the letter of the law? And this is what we're celebrating on Yud-Tes Kislev. What Chassidus did for our neshama, what Chassidus did for our Yiddishkeit, for our Judaism, it took us beyond the letter of the law. But what is that? Lifnim means prior, before. Lifnim mishuras hadin, before you get to the law, what is there? What is there before you get to the law? The lawgiver. Before you get to the mitzvah, there's a mitzaveh. Before you get to a commandment, there's a commander. Lifnim mishuras hadin means, why am I going to do this mitzvah? Because it's a big mitzvah? No. Because it's His mitzvah. And for Him, I would do anything. Knowing that it's His mitzvah, that changes everything. And that's why all mitzvahs are equal. Because if he wants it, that's the common denominator in all the mitzvahs. If it's his mitzvah, I want it. Because I'm serving him. This makes sense? So instead of looking at a mitzvah as a what, you look at a mitzvah as a who. And I think this is what happened when the Torah was offered to all the other nations. You know the story? What did they say that disqualified them? God came to them and said, I have a Torah. Are you interested? And they said, what's a Torah? Reasonable? Logical? Innocent? They said, what's a Torah? God said, never mind, you blew it. What did we say wrong? God comes and says, I have mitzvahs. Are you interested? And they said, like what? God said, never mind, you blew it. When God came to our ancestors and said, I have a Torah, they said yes. To what? To him. They heard God say, I have. Then I'm interested. This is your Torah? Then yes, I'm interested. What's a Torah? You have a mitzvah? I want it. What's a mitzvah? But first the answer is yes, because we were not responding to a commandment. We were responding to the commander. That's what's called Ivdu Es Hashem. You can do the mitzvah because you were commanded, or you can do the mitzvah because of the commander. It's different. It adds a new joy and a new pleasure to the mitzvah, and it makes the mitzvah lishma. If you're doing it because it's his mitzvah, then you're doing it selflessly. If you're doing it because it's a big mitzvah and will get you into heaven, who are you serving? Whose interests are you looking out for? So I know this is a radical new idea, that serving God literally means doing what he needs. And how can he need and still be perfect? Figure it out. And when you do, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. When God says, I don't need anything. I'm perfect. I always was, I always will be, I am all-powerful, almighty, all-knowing. I don't need anything but you. Does that make him less perfect? If he didn't need you, would he be more perfect? You are perfect when you need nothing. You are even more perfect when you need someone. When you need someone, you're not lacking anything. You are perfect. But that's not enough. To just be you is not enough. And where do we learn this from? From God. He was eternal, he was perfect before he created us, but he created us. Isn't that something? Doesn't that make him lovable? Not unreachable? He really doesn't need anything, and yet, without you, he's not happy. Which means you are not a means to an end. He doesn't need you to get bigger, to make him stronger, to make him older, to make him smarter. None of that is going to happen. He's already as great and as powerful as possible. So what could he possibly need you for? for you, not for something. You're not a means to an end. And therefore, we shouldn't treat him as a means to an end. Ivdu es Hashem, serve him, for him. That is the greatest simcha. So we take this day when the Alter Rebbe came out of jail and was given permission to teach Hasidus and to take us beyond the letter of the law and to connect us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu like for real. Two-way street. He just needs us to be his, and we just want him to be ours. What are we going to gain from this? Him. What is he going to gain from this? Us. That is amazing. So think about it, talk about it, discuss it, and see if you can come up with a good explanation of how needing someone doesn't make you imperfect. Any comments before we go? Any questions? Yes?
If the reason behind every mitzvah is the mitzvah itself, only positive, there's no cause, how do you differentiate between a chok and not a chok?
Don't differentiate. That's what the Mishnah says. Be careful with the little mitzvah just as much as the big mitzvah, because you never know. So if it's really about the mitzvah, then yes, there's a mitzvah that's chayev misa, and there's a mitzvah that's malchus, and there's a mitzvah that you bring a karban. They're different. They are different. But if you're serving him, it's the same him. And in that sense, all the mitzvahs are the same. Yeah?
Sorry, if that's true, then why did the Rambam go through such great lengths to find the Tamei HaMitzvah for all of the mitzvahs?
The Tamei HaMitzvahs, those that have a tam, is part of the mitzvah. Let me give you a good example. Why do we eat matzah on Pesach? So that you will remember Yemei Tzeischa Me'eretz Mitzrayim. That's a tam, right? In fact, if you eat matzah and you don't remember coming out of Mitzrayim and you don't talk about it, you're not really fulfilling the mitzvah. So that's part of the mitzvah. You still have to ask, why does he care if we remember coming out of Mitzrayim? So even the tam needs a tam. Tamei HaMitzvahs. The purpose of the mitzvah is to elevate you to a higher level. That's true. Why does he care to elevate you to a higher level? Nobody knows. That's the chayk part of every mitzvah. So listen, you have somebody who tells you, God doesn't need the mitzvah, he's only giving it for you so that you will benefit. Okay, why does he care to give me some benefit if he needs nothing? Or people say, God is like a father. He doesn't really need anything, he's just concerned for you. So a father's concern for his child is not his need? Then that's what he needs. He needs to take care of his child. So no matter how you explain it, no matter how you word it, you get back to a simple, undeniable fact. He's after something. He created the world. Doesn't that tell you something? So fine, he needs you to be happy. Does that make him imperfect? The need to make you happy makes him imperfect? And is that not his need? So I think that this should become like a whole mesechta. What is the Eibishter after? What is in the mitzvah for him? Not for me. It's his mitzvah. It is such an important topic. I was speaking to a man, a big Talmud Chacham, who sits in Kollel all his life, and we talked about, does God need, does he not need, is it really for him, is it for us? And of course he said it's all for us. God can't need anything because he's perfect. Now this is a man who has devoted his entire life to Torah and mitzvahs. So I asked him, if you really believe that God needs nothing, then what does Ivdu es Hashem mean? And this man was not ashamed to say, you know, I never understood that. Is that not sad? You devote your life to Torah and mitzvahs, but you don't know what it means to serve God? That shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen. We should be serving him with enthusiasm, not with doubts. Torah is real, Torah is true, and it describes him. Yes?
To what extent should every aspect of your life be dictated by Avodat Hashem? And is there any value in being human and having human experiences, or is that part of Avodat Hashem also?
The human experiences, how much of your life is Avodas Hashem, and where is your own private life or whatever?
No, but
off time.
I mean, like, is everything that you do supposed to be the means to Avodat Hashem? Like, if I go to a baseball game, is that so I can, like, learn better tomorrow? Or is it, like, is there, like, a value in me just, like, enjoying myself, or not enjoying myself? Or...
So to this, the Rambam says that the words Kol ma'asecha yihiyu l'shem shamayim are the most brilliant words he ever heard. Now that Rambam writes this, he says, I can't believe that a human being actually said that. It is so perfect, and in so few words, whoever said that must have been the biggest genius. Kol ma'asecha, not ma'aseh mitzvahs. Kol ma'asecha, whatever you do on your own for yourself as a human being should be l'shem shamayim. Now that sounds like a very high madrega that you can't really expect everybody to reach. But there are degrees. Like I mentioned before, I need to eat. Really? I need to stop eating. So when I say I need to eat, if I had a little bit of l'shem shamayim in my mind, I would realize, no, not I need to eat. God created me with the need to eat. I didn't do it. And if it was up to me, I wouldn't eat. If it was up to me, I wouldn't sleep. If it was up to me, I wouldn't take a break and go do silly things for entertainment. But I didn't create myself. He created me this way. So even when I'm doing my own thing, it's not really mine. It's his idea that I should eat. So even though I'm eating selfishly, not l'shem shamayim, but I'm aware. This is not my thing. This is also his thing. And then take it one giant step further. When you sin, is that your thing? No. The Aveda is also his invention. If he didn't tell you not to, you couldn't even sin. Right? That's why secular people get so frustrated. They can't find a sin. They're in the bad mood and they want to do a sin. What's a sin? Whatever you want to do is fine. That's very frustrating. I mean, I can't even sin. So when you do sin, you think, okay, now I'm doing my thing. It's not your thing. God created that too. So have at least a little appreciation. The bottom line is, no matter what you're doing, God is not out of the picture. And that's great. That's called a full-time relationship. So you're not eating only in order to be able to do mitzvahs. You're not such a big tzaddik. But even when you're eating, you're not fooled into thinking, this is my project. It's not your project. God created you to eat.
Is it a higher madriga to say that I'm eating so that I can serve God?
Of course, but that's got to be sincere. You know, it's like some people sit down to a meal on Shabbos, and before they start whatever dish it is, they say, L'kavod, you do that? L'kavod Shabbos Kodesh. I'm eating this in honor of Shabbos. You mean without Shabbos you wouldn't eat it? And how about the second helping? Is that also L'kavod Shabbos? Or are you simply hungry and you like the food? So fine, be hungry and like the food. Just don't forget that God did that to you. In other words, don't ever be without Him, because you can't get away from Him. Like it says in Tehillim, Im esak shamayim shamota, va'atzia sha'el hineka. Whatever it is I'm doing, God is there too. This guy said to me, I did something really, really bad. He was just beginning to get involved a little bit, and he did something really bad. So he says to me, I did this really bad. Is God going to send me to Gehenna? I said, I don't know, I'm not the judge. But I can tell you one thing. He can't send you to Gehenna. He sends you to Gehenna, and He is where? Like He's in Yerushalayim and He sends you to Gehenna? If you go to Gehenna, He got to go with you. Because no place can exist without Him. So why should we avoid going to Gehenna? Because why would you want to drag Him there? He didn't do anything. That's what it means. When you do a sin, you're dragging God into a place He doesn't want to go. But He has to go, because if He doesn't go, you can't go either. In other words, if He doesn't go, there's no sin. Is this making any sense at all, or am I just confusing you? If you want to pursue the subject, I'm sure you've heard of the Alter Rebbe's major work called the Tanya. It's not as difficult as people say. And there's no reason for you to be afraid. Open it up and take a look. It's available in English. Take a look and see what it says. It's becoming more and more popular 200 years after it was first published. So, help yourself. Yeah.
Is the thought to human relationships that meeting someone doesn't make you imperfect? Or is it other human needs that are just limitations?
In human relationships, there are selfish relationships and there are intimate relationships. A selfish relationship means I'm using you to improve myself. That's using a person, and that's never really holy. A real intimate relationship means I don't need anything from you, but I don't want to be without you. So what am I getting from you? That's not even a good question. What is it about you that I like? That's not even a good question. It's not from you and it's not about you, it's just you. Ein lanu melech ela ata. I don't need anything from you. I just need you to be mine so that I can be yours. Do we have another minute? We're running out of time? Who's? I got to tell you a quick story. True story. Back in Russia, the previous Rebbe declared war against Stalin and communism. Everybody else tried to survive communism or escape communism. But the previous Rebbe, being that Russia was his territory, he decided that we have to fight the evil and the unholiness of communism and destroy it. And so he drafted all his Chassidim into this army to fight communism and to destroy it. Thousands of Chassidim died in that battle. They were sent to Siberia, never came back, firing squad, tortured to death. But wherever the communists closed down a mikveh, somebody opened another one. When the cheder could no longer function in this city, they moved it to another city, underground. It was a magnificent scheme, cat and mouse, staying one step ahead of the government, so that when communism collapsed, the next day the yeshivas all came above ground, and Russia was full of Talmidim who knew how to learn Gemara. They didn't have to start from scratch, because they had been learning all along. And today, Judaism in Russia is magnificent. One of the victims in this battle, one of the heroes, was a young man, newlywed, well, not newly, but young, and he had an 8-year-old son, and he was caught and sent to Siberia. I forget whether it was for teaching in the cheder or for building a mikveh. They had been hiding in a non-Jewish village, but the communists found him. So now he is shipped off to Siberia, and his wife and the 8-year-old boy are left in this non-Jewish village. And the mother has no money, no food, cannot feed the child. Back in those days, when a Hasidic child was born, the parents bribed the hospital not to register the birth. Because every child born has a record, and when he reaches the age of 6, they expect him to attend the communist school. If he doesn't show up, they come looking for him. So to avoid sending their kids to a communist school, they bribe the hospital not to register the birth, so the kid does not exist. The problem with that is you can't travel in Russia without papers. So now the mother has to go get money or food from somewhere and can't take the child along because the child has no papers. So she was forced to leave the 8-year-old with a non-Jewish neighbor, an elderly couple, while she went to the big city to get money or food. She was planning to be away for 4 days, which was really not realistic. The trains didn't run on schedule. Her papers were not so perfect. And they stop you every step of the way. Anyway, the boy is now at the neighbor's house. The neighbor, the man, would come home drunk every night. And for fun, he would try to force the boy to eat something not kosher. Literally force. Push it into his mouth. And the kid would scream and bite and spit and cry every night like this. A week goes by, the mother has not come back. So the Russian woman can't stand the screaming and fighting every night. So she takes the boy at the end of the week and she puts him in an orphanage. In the orphanage, nobody forced him to eat what he didn't want, but they're constantly mocking him. What's wrong with you? Why can't you? Another week goes by, the mother has not returned. And the orphanage takes the boys on a hike. It's a hot day, summer day. The boys are thirsty. So they stop at a farm, and they ask the farmer if he has a cold drink for the boys. The farmer comes out of his cellar with a bottle of milk, gives each of the boys a cup, fills their cup with milk. This 8-year-old boy, who now lives in America, was about to drink the milk. And he hears the farmer saying, "It's so good that you stopped here with the boys. There's nothing healthier for a growing boy than horse's milk." So now this little boy had a moral dilemma. Horse's milk is not kosher, so he shouldn't drink it. But he's thirsty. It's a cold drink. He wants to drink it. But it's not kosher, so he shouldn't drink it. But if he doesn't drink it, it's going to start a whole new conversation. And they're going to mock him about this, and they're going to question him about this. And he doesn't want that hassle. So he should drink it. But then again, it's not kosher. He shouldn't drink it. So he went through this, he wrestled with this whole thing for a few moments, and then decided he's not going to drink it. And in order to avoid a scene, he pretended that the glass slipped out of his hand and spilled. When you're desperate, even an 8-year-old can be brilliant. Now the orphans are coming back to the orphanage, and his mother had returned. She went to the neighbor's house, and the neighbor said, "We don't have him, we put him into the orphanage." And she was very frightened because children were being kidnapped everywhere. There was no law and order, there was no one to... So she runs to the orphanage, and sure enough, she gets there and says, "Where's my son?" And they said, "No, he's not here right now." So now she's really panicking. They're playing games with me. I'll never see my child again. So she's pacing in front of the orphanage, not knowing what to do. And the kids are coming back from their hike. And the boy sees his mother. And he starts running towards her. And he shouts in Yiddish. He says, "Mama, I'm still yours. I didn't drink it." Which means what motivated him, what gave him the strength not to drink the milk, is not because he was a little tzaddik, not because he was frum. It was because he wanted to be able to say, "I'm still yours. You wouldn't drink it, I didn't drink it." When we keep mitzvahs, we're basically saying to God, "We are yours. You don't like it, we don't do it. You want it, I do it. I'm yours." So we're not being tzaddikim, we're not being holy, we're not being frum, we're not being orthodox. We are His. We don't want to stop that. We don't want to lose that connection. Chassidus says that every Jew, without exception, can correctly, honestly, and truthfully say to God, "I'm still yours. I did drink the milk, and I did work on Shabbos, but I'm still yours. I never wanted to stop being Jewish." And that's why every Jew is as precious as any other Jew. Because we are all equally His. And every Jew, even after 2,000 years of Golus and 3,000 years since Matan Torah, every Jew in the world can legitimately say, "I'm yours. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I am yours. I'm angry at you for the Holocaust, but I am yours." That's awesome. When you do a mitzvah, it's certainly because you are His. And you want to be able to say, "I'm still yours." So Hatzlacha Rabbah in your learning, Hatzlacha in your mitzvahs. Enjoy serving God, because there is no greater joy than that. And take a look in the Tanya and see what it says. You might find something inspiring. Thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, that's good. Use your mind and figure it out.